Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 375 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host tonight, Ben, and I'm joined by Chris. How you doing, mate? You keeping well?
Hello. Yes, very good, thank you. Got 4 days off now, Ben. Of course I'm good.
Yeah.
2 matches of football to observe, playing foot golf on Saturday, hopefully win, and a night out in Nottingham on Saturday as well. Many things happening this Easter weekend to look forward to. I'm in a very good mood. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, I am too. I'm very much looking forward to an elongated weekend. It's always fun, isn't it? You kind of, you get your work done on a Thursday. In meetings earlier in the week, you're saying, "Oh yeah, I'll get that done on Friday." I'm like, "No, I won't, and I won't get it done on Monday either. It's going to be good."
Yeah, I had to rearrange a few things. Appointments I had booked in with people that I'd booked in weeks ago for Friday. Is that I'm not going to be there to do those. Yeah. Let's get those booked in. So this week's been very busy, kind of making up for my previous errors. But yeah, it's all done now. It's all done. Looking forward to it.
Excellent stuff.
So
yeah. So I mean, it's actually been something of a quieter week this week. Obviously, last week we had an awful lot of stuff to get ready for the weekend. So this week has been it's probably slightly welcome change of pace, and we've not really done too much. Other than just binge TV shows, which has been very nice. But yeah, no, we wanted to kick off the discussion today. I'll rearrange the order slightly from what we put in the private chat, because it probably actually no, we'll do the banter section bit that we've kind of talked about. So we had a little when we were watching telly earlier in the week. I was watching the trophy final, and 2 incredible goals in the game, by the way, unbelievable strikes. But yeah, we were watching the trophy final, and there was something that happened, and I just thought, you know what, I think we can probably get a little bit of a podcast segment out of this, or a bit of a Q&A. So, footballing pet peeves, Chris. The one that got me, right? The one that got me is when you're watching a game and the commentary's on, and then the ball goes out. If a referee's been a bit, biased against you, shall we say, and then he gets a decision right, and everybody cheers and goes "Way!" and claps him, right? Those are sarcastic cheers. They are not, as commentators seem to want to say every single time, ironic cheers. It's a little tiny thing, I know, but it grates on me so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. 100% agree with that. And the song "Ironic," a lot of the examples in that song aren't examples of irony at all, are they? So I'm completely with you. But we wanted to touch on kind of other pet peeves. I've got one, which is, and this is not more of a commentary, it's more just in the game. And I think I've mentioned this before, but it just really, really winds me up, is when a team is obviously trying to slow the game down and time waste, and the referee does nothing, like acknowledges it for minutes and minutes and minutes, often in the first half, acknowledges it, tells them to hurry up, and then the 90th minute, someone will get a yellow card for time wasting when it's absolutely pointless and has achieved nothing. I'd rather you not book him now. I'd rather you just not punish it, because the fact you've done it is almost taking the piss.
It's like,
it's been going on all this time. Yeah.
And you know that it's wrong because you finally dished out a yellow card, but why didn't you do this when they've held the game up for 45 minutes of the 90?
Yeah, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. So that's one of mine, definitely.
No, absolutely. Let us know if you've got any pet peeves, if you're watching live, or if you're on the podcast itself. Just let us know, because I'm sure there are thousands. I mean, mine is very exclusively like, it's probably more of a grammar thing than anything else. So they can't speak correctly. They need to get it right. So no, it's but yeah, no, I always notice it. It always winds me up. Just like, so ironic cheers. They're not ironic. They're not ironic. Like you say, Alanis Morissette needs to sort her life out as well.
So out of it, has she?
No. But yeah, no, look, the biggest thing that we can probably kick off with is a bit of a debrief, really, I guess. We had our big event on Saturday, which was initially sort of exclusively for patrons of the site. We had the Stacey West Royal Ramble on Saturday night at Tension Twisted Realities. And it was just a really, really enjoyable evening, wasn't it? I had a thoroughly good time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was wonderful. And this might come across quite soppy, so pre-warning, but just a quick thank you, really, because it's the first one I've been involved in of a live show. It's the first Stacey West live show that we've done that didn't have a special guest that was kind of the main event. Weirdly, we were kind of the main event, and that was bizarre in itself. But yeah, just I think it was a bit of a realization for me, really, in that, you know, when we're delivering these podcasts, like we see the numbers, we see how many people listen, and we see how many people kind of are watching live and things, and it's really easy to forget that there's behind every single one of those numbers is a real person. And then just to kind of see everyone there on Saturday and have a lovely evening, just, yeah, it really kind of hits home. Just, yeah, it was really humbling. So just, yeah, a real quite genuine, heartfelt thank you, really, from everyone who, for everyone who engages in any way, listens to the podcast, speaks to us in person, comments on things, and of course, especially for those of you that were there on Saturday night as well. Just, yeah, a big old thank you, really, because it was quite a big thing for us all, I think, really, for us to kind of be the main event, and for people to still turn up and listen to us idiots talk about football for a bit. So yeah, that was great. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had a really good night. I think it was it was a bit stressful getting there, obviously, you know, getting to that point. I think we had getting all the kit, getting the kit set up, getting everything technically ready was I used to do it as a job, you know, that used to be my job. And I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm doing something else with my life now. But when I was doing that, I was like, oh, I've kind of missed this. But then, you know, to then go into the podcast and, like you say, to have a sold out venue, I suppose. I mean, obviously the tickets were free. We didn't sell the tickets, but you know, to have a venue that was full of people, you know, people coming up to us at the end and sort of saying, oh, you know, I'm so and so that comments on the videos, or, you know, I'm so and so that says hello on the live streams. Like, that's really nice. Yeah, it's just it's as you say, humbling is definitely the right word. But yeah, it was just a really good evening all round, and I think we've already said already, but we would love to say a big thank you again to Tension Twisted Realities for providing the venue. They did so for free, you know, and yeah, they've. I believe there's been an inquiry already as to whether another one would be feasible and possible. So, fingers crossed, we might have another one sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, we were maybe thinking kind of somewhere near the start of the season, or maybe at the start of the season, depending on fixtures and stuff. But we'll do that. But that's yeah, I suppose just from both of us, really, just a big thank you to everybody that does engage with us, but also appreciate this little section is quite self-indulgent. So we'll end it there. So thanks, everyone. Shall we move on and talk about football?
In a second, hang on.
Stats.
Okay.
Stats. There you go. Part of your intro. I love that. I love doing those so much. It was great fun. So yeah, let's move on just a little bit. Let's go into a topic that I think be on a lot of people's minds at the moment as we head towards the end of the season. Of course, player of the season comes to mind. So I think Gary's done an article on the site about this, and I think, to be honest, there's not too much variation, I'd imagine, from where we are in terms of the player of the season. There are some obvious standouts. I think the biggest question, which is asked in the article, is, does Paudie O'Connor's disciplinary record potentially hold him back from becoming, you know, player of the season for a number of fans? And you've just pulled a face as if to say, oh, that's a discussion point. So let's get on that first, Chris, and we'll see, you know, I mean, spoiler for me, no. But you know, is Paudie O'Connor your player of the season? If not, who are your top three?
Oh, don't know. That's a great point. Great question. I like this kind of in the moment because it puts you on the spot, doesn't it? And just quickly, I haven't read Gary's article, so I don't know if this is going to align at all with what he said or completely go against it. But who's my player of the season? I think I've probably got a top three. I'll work out the order in a bit. I think Sean Rowan's got to be up there because I think he's just been really consistent. He's not done a huge amount that's really outstanding. He's a bit like the Sam Habigam, isn't he, of yesteryear, in that he's just really consistent. Deriqua has to be in the conversation, I think, not just because he's been pretty much ever present and very dependable, but I think it's the fact that he replaced Lasse Sorensen, and we didn't think that was possible. And then he slotted in, and a lot of us, particularly early season, said, we love Lasse, but I actually think Tendai's a more rounded player. And he certainly suits the back four more than Lasse would have done. And then there's the big obvious elephant in the room in Paudie O'Connor, who I just think has been a real leader for us this season. He's been so consistent. And in terms of the little theme tune, stats, he is, in terms of the type of defender that Paudie is, he is up there with some of one of the top three centre backs in the league for the metrics that we probably want to be measuring him against. So, does the player of the season award simply just go to who is your best player or most effective player? Then it's between him and Ethan Arahan, isn't it? But Ethan's been out injured for a bit, so I think that discounts him. But then you've got the big question about, well, Tendai and Sean have probably been, and I don't know the numbers behind this, but have been the most kind of ever present, if you like, of the players in almost all competitions as well. So I think their longevity and consistency, because availability is an attribute in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So they're my top three. I don't know if that aligns with what Gaz said or what you're thinking at all. I think I would probably pick Tendai just over Paudie. And I think maybe that disciplinary element, because he has missed 7 games or so through his disciplinary issues, and Tendai hasn't. I think they were probably similar, and maybe Paudie was just ahead of Tendai in my mind, but Tendai has been more reliable in terms of his availability than Paudie. So maybe there's just a little, he's just come ahead there. But I would say those three are my top three.
I mean, my top three are essentially the same. I mean, Gaz has given 4, with Paudie being like the 4th sort of honourable mention, I guess. Spoiler: Gaz's top 3 are Jovan, Sean Rowan, and Tendai in reverse order. So, yeah, I mean, for me, Carl said it in the chat. Deriqua has to be considered a player of the season. Of course, he does. He's come in. When we signed him, we looked at him and went, he's 34. How is he going to replace Lasse Sorensen?
32.
32, sorry. No, sorry, yeah, 32. Yeah, how is he going to replace Lasse Sorensen? It's ridiculous. And then he's just proven us all wrong, hasn't he? He's been phenomenal. So you mentioned about the games played, the numbers there. I mean, Sean Rowan's on 42 games this season. Tendai's on bang on 40, and Paudie O'Connor's on 36. So obviously, Paudie's missed a few due to suspension. But yeah, absolutely. And they are, for me, they are the top 3. I would be very surprised if we see the fan vote go any other way. It's just where they would all slot in. For me, I think Paudie just edges it out. And it's probably based on the disciplinary stuff is obviously something that will need curbing if he's going to go on to play at a higher level. Now, whether that would impact on how Paudie plays is probably the biggest question, because it's his mentality. It's the way that he plays. He goes full-throated at everything. And it's not about being violent or being overly aggressive. He's just committed. I didn't realize captions auto-generated, says Gary. Okay, all right, apparently there are. But yeah, for me, it's not about being a violent player or an overly aggressive player. He's just full ball with everything that he does. There have been instances, obviously, where that has boiled over, and it's his temper maybe that's let him down. But on the whole, I think you want a player of the season who's going to be, or you want a player, sorry, as your captain who's going to be, going at everything as much as they possibly can. Gary does make the point. He says you can't have a player of the season suspended for nearly 25% of it. Yes.
I mean, you're fudging the numbers a little bit there by rounding it up to the nearest 25 there. But it's a good point. I think in regard to his style of play, that's probably the biggest talking point, because he's a real leader. He makes those first contacts. He's very aggressive. He gets there first because of his aggression and desire to win and be first to the ball. And I think if all of his suspensions had been as a byproduct of that, you think, well, you want him to be playing in that manner. Now and then it's going to go just slightly over the line, but that's a risk you're willing to take for the general kind of benefit over the course of a season. I think maybe what will go against him is the fact that actually his accumulation of yellows and his 2 reds weren't really off the back of those sorts of situations. They were, a lot of them were avoidable, either for chatting back, or for a little bit of lax of concentration, maybe in regard to that calmness in the moment from decision making perspective. So it's interesting to see would it impact his game. But I think Paulie's been an absolutely superb player for us. But we're literally we're not here to criticize him. He's clearly probably one of the top 2 in terms of running for player of the season. So that means that the standards are really high, and you've just got to pick between 2 very, very, very good and effective footballers. Just quickly on Jovan, because I think it's hardly a secret that we're all 4 of us at the Stacey West are kind of Jovan Makama fans. I personally wouldn't say he's in the conversation quite yet for player of the season, because the season should be encapsulating form and influence over the whole season. And Jovan has grown into this season. He's always shown flashes. He's always shown potential. But he's really started to hit the ground running, and we're getting the end product of that potential in the last couple of months, really. So he's been brilliant recently, fully deserved his winning of the League One Player of the Month. So we mentioned this last week that he was nominated. He did win. That's fantastic news for him and the club. But I think I wouldn't want to be clouded by recency bias in that regard. Such an asset for the club, huge future, been brilliant recently. But over the course of the whole season, I think maybe other players have been just a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, we're kind of the discussion between Tendai and Pordy is kind of there at the minute, but obviously that third choice, like you say, it's, with it being Sean Rowan, he is essentially what we say every so often here on the podcast is, a consistent 7.5, 8 out of 10 player. He rarely has an absolute stinker of a game, and I think there's moments where in a game you'll watch it, and we've spoken about confirmation bias in the podcast before, where if he makes a bad pass, you're then on the lookout for the next bad pass. Oh, his distribution's dropped, but that's not necessarily the case. He has been consistently very good for us this season, and I think having an asset like Sean Rowan, yes, he's out of contract at the end of this season, but if he does go anywhere, we will be due what I'm led to believe is a relatively substantial compensation fee. I don't know what the word comprehensive would be at that point, but it's an interesting one. But yeah, I think he's been great. Obviously had to adjust from being kind of a left wing back last season at times last season to slotting into the central role, and I think he's really come of age, I think, this season compared to others, and I think he's again another stalwart of that central defence. So for me, Sean Rowan is definitely up there, but the conversation is between, for me, Tendai and Pordy, and it's just I would not be disappointed if it went to either of them. Let's just put it that way. They've both been outstanding for us this season. Tendai, I think mainly Tendai for possibly exceeding expectations. Like I say, when he came in, you look at the profile of the play, look at where he's come from. He's sort of been in exile, I guess, out in Cyprus. He's kind of, out there, and he's, oh yeah, I'll cut my, I'll cut that contract and I'll come to play at Lincoln. Not the kind of player you'd have expected us to sign, but just an absolute revelation. And the fact that he is apparently, very involved behind the scenes as well with the younger players, helping to bring them through. It's one of those signings where you just think, that just seems to be the perfect fit all round. So yeah, it's very tight for me between Pordy and Tendai. You watch Tendai will score a hat trick tomorrow, and then I'll have to eat my words. But
my gut instincts, I think Tendai will just edge it, maybe off the back of the fact that Pordy's had a recent suspension. And I know we don't want to get clouded by recency bias, but I'm just thinking in terms of just voting, generally speaking, that might just play on people's minds a little bit. But they've both been superb, haven't they? Let's not beat around the bush. They've both been great. Just quickly on Sean Rowan, I appreciate we don't want to spend too long on this topic, but just quickly on Sean Rowan, I just thought there's one particular thing I think has really improved with Sean this season compared to previous, and that because he's been really good. He's shown promise. His one-on-one defending's always been really good, but I think maybe last season, certainly the season before, if ever he did make a mistake, you might as well have brought him off the pitch, because then 2 and 3 mistakes. Maybe I seem to remember a game at X2 he made an error that led to a goal, and then he was awful for the next 5, 6, 7 minutes, and it looked he had to get hauled off. And I just think, and that comes from inexperience, and so that kind of maturity, I think, emotional maturity to not let mistakes bother you. And if he does misplace a pass, the next one's almost never misplaced. Like you don't notice him have a bad game because he doesn't make multiple errors. Every player will misplace a pass in a game. Every player will make a mistake, but he doesn't make multiple in any given game. And I think that's one thing that's really changed in his game recently by being the last year or so. But I feel his reaction to adversity, reaction to things not going his way, and has just improved tenfold to the point I honestly think he's one of the first team, if not the first name on the team sheet, because of the uniqueness of his position. I just think that doesn't want to be understated. I don't think he'll win player of the season, but I think he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation that we've just had.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the other thing as well, he's in a similar way to Jovan, he's had a lot of undue criticism this season. And I think the one that springs to mind for me is when he took the press conference. And he sat there, and a lot of people criticised him for the way that he was sitting. Sat there with his arms crossed, and he seemed. People said that he seemed like combative and very closed off. And it was that point in the season where we were on a bad run, and everybody was kind of looking for something to moan about. And then that week, it just so happened to be Sean Rowan sat there with his arms folded. But
I remember that. I can't remember that at all.
Similarly to what you said, like if that had have happened maybe last season, we may not have seen Sean at his best for a few games. But this season, it didn't really faze him, and he just kind of got on with it, which is what you want from a player, really. So yeah. So there we go. That's the player of the season discussion. So very, very well identical top threes for us. And yeah, it's a coin flip as to who takes it. For me, between Tendai and Pordy, I'd be tempted to go with Pordy, and Chris. Seems like you'd be more tempted to go with Tendai.
Yeah, it's very narrowly though. Like you say, it's pretty much a coin flip between the two of them.
Absolutely. So, right, the next discussion point, and I'm almost loath to bring this up because of some of the points that have been flying around online around it. The Sam Clucas situation. We were asked about this on Saturday in our sort of unrecorded Q&A that we had with the live audience, and it just felt like it's a strange situation, but I think there's a big part of the conversation that is clouded by the fact that he is born and bred in Lincoln.
Yes.
So obviously, we signed Sam in the window on a short-term deal, came in from playing for Oldham in the National League, came up to League One, didn't feature straight away. And at the time, I think the wording was something around the lines of, we need to see what his role is going to be, and we need to see what he's going to be able to do. Didn't feature straight away. which immediately led to all kinds of conspiracy theories and everything else. Played a couple of games, obviously scored straight from the corner against Mansfield, which was phenomenal.
That was fun.
Yeah, and then was unfortunately gave a penalty away. But other than that, he hasn't been in the match day squad. Now he's obviously been around the ground. We saw him in the fan zone on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, what's your take on this, Chris? Is it that we signed him and certain people didn't want him, certain people did, or all of the theories that are going round, and one that Roy's just mentioned about, isn't it to do with Sam's contract that if he plays too many games, we have to offer him one? All of these conversations that are going round, or is it just simply he's not fitting into the current plan in whatever way, shape, or form?
I think there's a lot going on here, and I agree with you, by the way, that it's clouded a little bit by the fact his name is Sam Clucas and he's from the city, and that makes a big impact here. Firstly, this has become relevant as a conversation because Michael Skubala referenced it in his press conference. He was asked it, and he spent a few minutes talking about it. So I think it's only fair for us to discuss that again. So this isn't like a clickbaity discussion point. I just think it's worth just talking about it honestly and openly, because none of us know the actual specifics, but some of us maybe have got different views or different opinions, or maybe just looking at things from a different angle sometimes helps, doesn't it? So first and foremost, I 100% don't think that there was any issue in regard to it was someone signing over someone else's. At this football club, categorically, there is no such thing as a director of football signing, a manager signing. Someone wants him, someone doesn't. It's always a collective decision. Like what that is 100% just guaranteed. Like there's no discussion on that. That is fact. What isn't fact is the situation that Sam finds him in now and why. Now, this next bit is just opinion from me, really. But my understanding is Sam was brought in as cover for in case we sold Ethan Arahan. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, what that doesn't mean is that he's a direct replacement for Ethan Arahan in the first team. We want 2 players for every position. So the theory is, as we've seen recently, if Ethan Arahan is sold, or as it turned out, injured, but the idea in January was, what if we sell him? Then my understanding is that Conor McGrandles would then fill in for Ethan, but then you need a backup for Conor McGrandles. And that's kind of what Sam was brought in to do. That was kind of the role. So in that kind of, as we were at the time, holding role, the single 6 in a 3-5-2, almost third in the pecking order, but expected to be number 2 in the pecking order if Arahan had left. That was my understanding of the signing. I might have got that wrong, but that was my understanding of the signing. Now, if we just for a moment, and this is difficult to do, by the way, but if we just for a moment take the fact that his name is Sam Clucas and he is from Lincoln out of the conversation, and we look at this just from a slightly more balanced and pragmatic viewpoint, player that's had good career in the game, obviously played at the highest level, has had a decent career recently in the Championship, but this season, at the age of 34, had played eight or nine matches in the National League. That's it. He hadn't played a whole season. He played 8 or 9 matches. And we got a 34-year-old on a short-term deal that was coming in as cover, and he had played 9 matches, been in and out of the squad. But there's other players who are definitely contracted for next season who have done well when they've played, i.e. Hamilton, McGrandles has been decent, Bayliss has done really well, Arahan's back in the squad now as well. Would we really mind that the 34-year-old we brought in as cover in January in case we sold Ethan Arahan isn't playing ahead of those players? I think that's the point. If Sam plays, someone else misses out. And I don't think any of those players deserve to miss out. So I just don't think there would be quite as much concern around the situation if his name wasn't Sam Clucas and he wasn't from Lincoln, but the situation was the same. Now, does that mean that Sam's going to be happy about the situation? He's a professional footballer. He wants to play. But I also imagine there'll be an understanding that he knew the role he was coming in for when he signs. Like behind the scenes, people are going to know what's, the role that he has, and he's going to know that as well. So my opinion is that there's probably a little bit more discussion going on about this and feeling around this than maybe the actual situation objectively maybe requires. However, you can't be 100% objective about this because he is from the city. There is a lovely story there, and we all do deep down want the story to be successful and want him to come back and be the hero for a season or two. We all want that to happen, but yeah, I think it's probably more a case of the fact that the role that he's performing in the squad is probably not the role that people expected it to be when we signed him. Even though the fact that the communication from the club was actually quite clear in regard to what role he's coming in for. Let's not forget, we didn't sign the Sam Clucas that was in the Premier League. We signed the Sam Clucas that was playing half a season in the National League. That's the level that we were signing him from. So let's just bear that in mind. He's obviously far too good for the National League, but he's also at the tail end of his career, not quite the player he was when he was in the Premier League. Like no one's going to be at that age, are they? So, and just to kind of really reference in relation to the contract, he's played 8 matches. It'd be weird. It'd be weird for
that's the one for
9 matches to be the trigger for him to get an extension. I don't know if there's something in there. I imagine there is something in there after a certain number of games. How many of that is, I don't know. I'll be very surprised if you left him out the team now, because if he plays one more game, it gets triggered. And the fact is, he would be on 9. That's just a bit of a random number for that to maybe be the agreement. But yeah, we don't know that. But I've spoken a lot about that now, so I'll be quiet and ask what you think.
No, I'm in agreement for most of it. I think fundamentally, I think, there is. It feels like there is something more to it than what's out there. Obviously, that's going to be the case because there's something more about everything. We don't know the situation with so many of the players that we've got. That there could be options that we don't know about on players. There could be contract details that have been misreported. Whatever it is, there will always be something that we don't know about a player's contract details. And if I'm honest with you, we don't have a right to know that. Like, I would be aggrieved if my manager was being spoken to by somebody else, and then my manager went, "Oh yeah, Ben's on this much money, and then if he if he gets a good performance review, then we'll give him this much more." And then that was broadcast publicly. I'd be really pissed off if that happened.
That's a good point. I think just quickly on that is that I think the club have been very conscious of actually, when we sign players, on the announcement actually telling us how long the contract is now. And that's something that it always used to be. We sign this player for an undisclosed fee on a long-term or short-term deal. Yeah, like they do actually say a lot more than a lot of other clubs do in regard to the contract length. But those more finer details, they are private things, aren't they? Of course they are. It creates speculation for us, though, doesn't it? That's
absolutely. Now, look, whether that means is there a great conspiracy? Probably not. Like it's going to be one of those things where, like you say, there is not one individual that will sign a player. That it will go through multiple levels of approval. It'll go through managerial approval. It'll go through director approval. It'll go, to Clive. It'll go through the board. Whatever it is, it's not like somebody just goes out one day and goes, "Oh, I want to sign this player." It's like, okay, cool, right. Well, where are we getting the money from, and how are you budgeting for it? Like everything will be going through a chain of command, and everybody will be in that chain of command at some point. And I seem to remember when we spoke to Mark Kennedy. When he came in, the conversation sort of turned to the director of football model and things like that, and said, well, what would happen if, for example, a player came in, and we went through the recruitment process, and Mark said, well, there isn't a player that's signed without the manager's say so, or the manager gets, or the head coach rather gets the final word on things. Mm-hmm. I would assume that is very similar now. I'm not saying it's identical, but I mean, look, ultimately, what's happened has happened. Like Sam hasn't been playing. I would expect to probably see him at least at least once before the end of the season. We also don't know what kind of role he's having off the pitch. Whether he wants to go into coaching, whether he wants to sort of have a bit more of a mentor role behind the scenes with the younger players, similar to what we've said about Tendai. There's so much more. For me, there's so much more that Sam Clucas can offer off the pitch as well as on the pitch. And as you've said, at the moment, has anybody really done anything wrong consistently enough to warrant being dropped? And And I mean, yes, Conor McGrath has had a bad few games. And I think that the only thing that I would probably pull you up on from what you've said is in that little time period where, after Ethan Arahan's injury and obviously Sam had come in my opinion, there was probably more of a spot there where Sam could have played over players that were in a bad run of form. That's my take. And of course, we'd all love to have seen Sam play more. And we'd still love him to see, love to see him play more. But is there more to the situation than is publicly out there? Definitely. Is that something that we're entitled to know? Absolutely not. Does that stop people making
quite as sinister as maybe?
No. Does it give people the opportunity to make up conspiracy theories and all the rest of it? Of course it does. It's the internet. It's what happens. But look, I think that's probably a spot to wrap up for that one, unless there's anything else that you want to just throw into the mix before we do.
Maybe just one or two really quick things in regard to, that's a good point, in regard to that time that when he hadn't been part of the club for too long, and there maybe was one or two spots that potentially were available. I think there was a lot of talk at the time around he just needs to get up to speed physically, because there's a big old difference between National League and League One, particularly in our style at the time. In League One, so maybe there's an element there. I don't want this to come across just defensive of the decision, because I don't know what's been going on either. But I always just try and have a bit of understanding for it. But honestly, did I expect him to play more than he has, despite everything we've just said? Yeah, I did a bit. I didn't ever expect him to be a key figure, to be honest, but I did expect him to play more than 8 matches. However, it's weird now, isn't it? Because there are other players that are playing better in the team, that are playing well, that don't, not necessarily better because you've got nothing to compare it to, but are playing well, and therefore don't deserve to lose their place. However, Michael is changing the team regardless of performance, because he needs to have a look at with one eye on next season. So that kind of conflicts a little bit, doesn't it, in the fact he's not been part of the squad. So yeah,
but
I would be surprised if we don't see him at all.
Does that then lead to Michael's preparing for the squad for next season? Are we going to have a Sam Clucas who would be 35 in the squad at that point?
I'm guessing there's only one way to find out, isn't there? That's why.
Indeed. So it's interesting. Like I say, that there's obviously more to it, but I think there's being entitled to that information. I wouldn't say we are. But that's a good spot to wrap that one up as we head to a break, because we're on 36 minutes, Chris. How did we get here? So, right, we'll head off for a little ad break now. Those of you watching live, we will say hello, and we'll see if we can get some more of your pet peeves as well, your footballing pet peeves. Let us know what they are. We'll come back to you on the other side of this. We'll see you in a minute.
Hello, YouTube.
Here we go. All right, YouTube, how are we doing? And Facebook.
And Facebook, I can see. I can see the comments, it turns out. I just can't see how many people are watching.
So we'll just run through the comments quickly. We've got Adam is in. How we doing? Steve's in. Hi, chaps. Andy S is in. Says, good evening. Steve also says, his pet peeve, first half, 2 goals, trainer on twice, 1 minute extra. Second half, no goals, 5 subs, no trainer, 7 minutes. How does that work? Yeah, no, it's the timing for... Yeah, I get that. The timing for stoppages is pretty insane sometimes. John Booth is in, as always, says, good evening, lads. Great evening on Saturday. Can't wait for the next one. Neither can we. We are very excited. Carl is in. Evening, lads. Thanks for all the hard work on the podcast. Always look forward to listening to them. Very kind of you to say so, Carl. Much appreciated. He also says Derek were considered for player of the season. So Neil says, what is the cutoff age for young player of the season? That's a very good question.
Good question.
Is it 21?
No, I think it's old. It might be 23.
Okay.
I don't actually know off the top.
Correct answer.
Definite.
Correct answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gaz has been involved as well, saying he didn't realize captions were also generated. Kev is in. Evening, gents. Are you still in Pride Deluge, Kev, or are you back? Yeah. Well, I will probably expect to see him on 38 minutes on Monday afternoon. Roy says, bit late, but hi, guys. Sean's been fantastic. A few mistakes, but don't forget he's still young and learning. Richard says, I agree with Carl. Derek gets my vote, but Rowan is a very close second. So there we go. That is the comments. Get your pet peeves rolling in. We'll probably pick up a couple of them going into the second half. As we look to do that very shortly. Are we ready? Cool. Right. In 3, 2, 1. And we are back from our ad break. Thank you to our sponsors for the week. And thank you to those watching live as we record. So, 2 games coming up over the weekend. One on Friday, one on Monday. The first one is away at the formerly known as the Medeski against Reading. The league's basket case club, I think football's basket case club in England right now. A team with multiple off the field issues that, yeah, I mean, somebody will write the book on that someday and I will read it and I will be aghast at what I read, no doubt. But a team that's defying that and is actually in really good form, looking to kind of creep into the playoffs as the season winds down. And of course, we've got 4 games remaining. All 4 of those teams are in some sort of contention at the right end of the table. Reading, probably, I don't know. Would it be fair to say that Reading are currently, not necessarily outsiders because they've got a 3-point gap on Leyton Orient, but yeah, surprise entries in the playoffs? Would you say, Chris?
Yeah, very much so for many reasons. But you can't deny the form they're on. So there's a massive conflict here in Reading, which we're going to talk about a little bit in regard to performances, overall performances compared to simply results, which is the most important metric of them all. And but I just think, just aside from that, at the moment, I think it was commendable, the outstanding job that Ruben Salas did at Reading, just to kind of keep the club afloat. They were always looking up rather than down, it seemed, despite the turmoil that's going on behind the scenes. And you often find, because there's sadly been a few clubs that could be described as basket cases in the recent history, and you often find that when there is uncertainty, disorganization, etc., off the pitch, that does often translate itself onto the pitch a little bit as well, because of the, it's going to have an impact, isn't it? It's going to have an effect on you psychologically, even if you're unaware of it. And what I've been amazed by for years now, really, is how Reading, just the team on the pitch and the management team, have been able to justify that and not allow the ridiculousness that's happening off the pitch and the uncertainty to really derail anything on the pitch at all. I was adamant that as soon as Ruben Sellers left the club, that Reading would start to drop down the table, and I couldn't be more wrong. They've been absolutely superb, and Noel Hunt deserves enormous praise for how he's not just kept them very comfortably in League One this season, but they are in the playoff places. They are absolutely hitting form at the right time of the season, and they've got a right chance. So I think we've got to be very, I suppose, just full of praise, really, for the management team, the players, and of course the supporters of Reading Football Club. However, there is a big old but coming, Ben. But their outcomes massive and their results massively go against their underlying numbers and their overall levels of performance. It's weird. I was so surprised by this. So surprised. I'm conscious. I've got a few bits to talk through now. So I want to make sure that I'm not the only person talking. Oh, here we go. I knew this was coming.
I'm a stats.
Yeah, here we go.
There we go.
But just
that's
on
my favourite button now.
Their situation at the moment off the pitch on it. Are you surprised that they are where they are as well?
I'm flabbergasted. Like you say, from a team that is, well, I almost expected them to do a Bury, and self-implode. Well, that's probably the wrong way of looking at it, because Bury actually got promoted, didn't they, before they went pop? But in terms of just the absolute chaos that's going on, I genuinely thought it would impact everything on the pitch. The fact that it hasn't is just beyond me.
Yeah, fair play. And obviously, there's still that uncertainty at the moment. There's
yeah. Oh yeah, well, I mean, they could still be suspended.
Extended. Yeah.
Is it the 27th? I think they've got. Is that
It's been extended, because it originally was a week or two ago, wasn't it? And then it's been extended in the hope that they'll find a buyer that can take it on. So again, it's just so much going on. But I suppose almost the flip side of that is they're kind of used to it now. So of course we all hope that the club survives and then they can kick on. That goes without saying. But from a Reading point of view, they're used to it being a basket case. So they're probably used to getting on with it, really, and getting on with it they have done. But we are not a Reading podcast, we're a Lincoln City podcast. So what we want to look at here is, can we beat them? Can we spoil the party a little bit in regard to the on-the-pitch success that they're having? What's actually going on? What can we expect from Saturday? And this is the conflict now between all of the stats and metrics which help paint a picture in regards to what's the actual kind of full story of what's happening, but they really do hugely conflict with the results. And so it's like the stuff that you can tangibly measure compared to the stuff that's very real, like confidence and desire and the winning mentality. You can't measure that, but we all know it's absolutely is a thing in football and is very real. And they've got that in abundance. So in terms of outcomes and results, they are, over the last 12 matches, they've got the fifth best points return. So they are absolutely where they deserve to be in terms of that recent form table. Only lost one match in that run as well, which I think is absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I think it's one in the last 15, which is ridiculous.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, they deserve to be where they are in terms of their results. 100%. They absolutely deserve to have risen up the table. But there's not a single metric in terms of their overall performances that suggests that they should be there. Not one, genuinely, not one. Other than they've two individual players. They've got Lewis Wing and they've got Joel Pereira in goal. Joel Pereira is, in terms of his goals prevented metric, has prevented 5.89. So near enough 6 goals that Reading should have conceded that they haven't effectively, accumulatively. That equates to points. Lewis Wing taking the most shots out of any midfielder in League One, the most out of outside the 18-yard box, and has scored 6 goals this season from an XG of 3. So, yeah, so there are some individuals there that are really kind of propping up some of the maybe some of the bits and bobs in their team that are weaknesses. So, what's jumping out to me? What is the conflict here? Well, I'll just go through a few key ones in regards to where do they rank in the table for some certain metrics. And what you'll often find is, there's always, if you look for something that stands out, you'll probably find something. But it's interesting how all these metrics stand out for the fact that they don't stand out in a positive way, if that makes sense. So 8th in the league for possession. So they tend to have just over 50% of the ball, but that doesn't really give too much away. In terms of goals per 90 and goals against per 90, they are mid-table / bottom half. So their XG is 14th best in the league. Their XG against is actually the 4th worst. So that would show that actually they can see quite a lot of high quality chances. They're 23rd in the league for big chances that they've created. So what that means is that the chances they create aren't necessarily the highest quality. And that adds up in terms of shots inside and outside the 18-yard box. They're second lowest in the league for shots inside the 18 and second highest for shots outside. Normally, what you'd say is that means they're not creating a huge volume of high-quality chances. The chances they're creating are often kind of pot shots. But again, you counter that with, yes, but Lewis Wing. So they're 21st in the league for corners, so it's not like they're relying on set pieces. So yeah, there's nothing that stands out here that suggests that they should be as high as they are. So it's bizarre.
So they're remarkably unremarkable.
Yeah. So if this was earlier in the season, what would be my take from this would be, well, yeah, what the stats are great at doing is maybe just shining a light on some of the bigger picture things that maybe the results are hiding. We've seen this under Mark Kennedy, didn't we? From a negative point of view for us, we were getting decent results, but we all knew if those performance levels were going to continue, the results would drop off a cliff because we couldn't continue how we were and keep getting those outcomes that we did, and that obviously happened. And it's nice to be proven right, but it's not rocket science. That's just what you expect. I think what's making me doubt that a little bit is that there's not long of a season left. So all this would indicate that they're probably. Are they a good team? Are they decent? Are they? Yeah, they are. But are they as good as their recent results would suggest they are? No. You can't say they are. There is a weakness. There are some weaknesses in their team. They are in a hot patch at the moment. They're on good form, and they're maybe getting the rub of the green in terms of some of those. Yeah, if you flip a coin, you'd expect it 50% of the time to be heads and 50% tails. Maybe when Reading are flipping their coin at the moment on the pitch, it's turning up to there's there's a crown, there's a royal crown. There you go. That's a shit pun, isn't it? There's a royal crown that's coming out way over 50% of the time at the moment for them. But like I said, there's then the intangibles that they're hitting form and getting the rub of the green at the right time in the season. So what can we take out of this for us from a more tactical perspective? There's a couple of things I think that stand out. Two things really in terms of stylistically. They try and play out, so that suits us trying to press. They conceded in the one match they have lost recently against Blackpool. They lost 3-0. A couple of them were from defensive errors. One was from playing out, so there's an opportunity there. They are the fourth worst team in the league in terms of conceding set pieces. So they've conceded 19 goals from set pieces. We're obviously the best. We've scored 27. So there's a mismatch there if we can create set pieces. And they are quite right side dominant in their attacks. And oddly, their opposition have more of the ball in Reading's left back area of the pitch than Reading do. Now that could mean a couple of things. Does it mean that Reading's left back's rubbish, or does it mean that there's maybe space left there? I think maybe the latter.
Oh, that's great. We'll just get Joe on. Oh no, hang on.
Yeah, well, that was the thought, wasn't it? But can I expect us to maybe play quite transitionally? And if we play transitionally, we exploit our right hand side, their left hand side, because we expect that's probably where the space is going to be. Then that might be something that, in terms of what do you expect to see. I expect when we have to go long or we have to go direct, we'll probably go down our right hand side, their left hand side. So maybe it's a game for Eric Ring on the right to use his pace to kind of get in behind that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. So what's the big takeaway is actually, if this was any other point of the season, I think what I go into this saying is they're not as good as the results suggest. They have some real weaknesses here. Stylistically, they suit us. But there's two big factors here, which is they're on a hot form at the moment, and there's the intangibles are going to be kind of really, really, really kind of prominent. And also, as much as we really want to turn up and be aggressive and have the intensity that we know that we can have, we haven't got anything to play for. Yeah, players don't need to risk injury and missing pre-season for next season. We're not going to go up or down. We saw against Shrewsbury, when you lose a little bit of momentum in the game, it's really difficult to get it back, particularly at this stage of the season. So it depends a little bit on what version of Lincoln City turn up, because you can't criticise us of having no intensity against Charlton, for example. We're brilliant against Charlton from an intensity perspective. So if that style of team turns up that played Charlton, we should probably win this game. But if Lewis Wing scores a goal from a mile out, if Pereira in goal just pulls off worldie after worldie and makes loads of saves that keep him in the game, and also those intangibles have just got the confidence and that kind of ability to grind games out and score from nowhere. And if we're not quite 100% at it in terms of intensity, then it could quite easily go Reading's way. So all of that means that don't know what's going to happen, really, Ben.
Well, I had a chat with Matt from Elm Park Royals on YouTube, so that preview is up now. Go and watch that. And I think first and foremost, like they're just kind of hoping that the club is still there. But while they're in this, obviously, like you say, they've been in it for a while. They're just kind of enjoying it. Like, I think Matt said as one of the things, like in the preview, he said that for the first time in 18 months, like at the game at the weekend, he went over and for the first time in like a year and a half, he actually wore a Reading shirt to the game because he wasn't embarrassed to wear it. Because of all of the chaos that's gone on off the pitch, it's just been such a difficult time to be a Reading fan. But now, they can almost feel it. They can almost taste the fact that they are in sixth at the minute, and it's we could get to the playoffs, and then it could be, this could then happen. And he said the perfect storm would be, in the playoff final, they're 1-0 up after 70 minutes, and then they get the news through that the club's been sold, or whatever it is. That perfect storm. But I mean, I'm always fascinated by off the field stuff when it comes to football clubs. I'm always just I find that incredibly interesting. And like I say, if there's a book written about the Reading situation, I will read it at some point because it just seems absolutely bonkers. Like the EFL have been completely toothless in the way that they've handled the situation as well. I just think there are no winners in this situation at all. But as for what it means for Saturday, I think
Friday.
So I've been doing that all week. I have been doing that all week. As for what it means for Friday, I just think it's going to be a very difficult game against a team that are, they have everything to play for at the minute. They've got fans that are feeling pride in what's going on in front of them, regardless of what's going on behind them. And I just think it's going to be a really, really tricky game. However, like you say, if we show up, I personally think there might be a bit of a reaction because Michael was saying in his in his post-match press conference, we took our foot off the pedal, and I've said to the guys in there, you can't do that. If you want to impress me for next season, you can't do that. So yes, it's a little bit cliche, but while there is nothing to play for in terms of a league position and everything else, there is a lot to play for in terms of cementing your position in that squad for next season. And I hope that some of the players are just going to pick the ball up and run with it, and well, not physically, of course, but metaphorically, that they're going to pick it up and run with it and say, right, this is my time. I want to show what I can do. And I in terms of a lineup, I mean, if we're going to go there, I think Eric Ring out on the right sounds like the right call from what you've said there about the space on the left. I think, Joe Gardner sticking out on the left as well. I've been really impressed with Joe Gardner, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's a real asset, and I'd be delighted if he sticks around for next season too. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a really difficult game. But like you say, if we show up like we did against Charlton, the predictions that I made, I said 2-2. I think it's going to be one of those games of football where it'll just be all over the shop, and we'll come away from it going, that was entertaining, and we've taken a point.
Yeah, I'd like it just to be good fun, really.
Yes.
And now I'm a Lincoln City supporter, so I obviously want us to win. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never gonna actively not want us to win. But of all the teams that are chasing the playoffs, which fan base do I hope has a success story? I think it's Reading. Best case scenario, we win on Saturday, but they still get in the playoffs and they win
Friday.
Yeah, there we go. Of course.
Yes.
There we go. 1-1. That's my honest hope. I hope we have a lovely, really entertaining game for Lincoln fans that make it. I hope it's a worthwhile journey because it's really good fun. For Reading fans, I hope it doesn't derail their promotion push, but I hope we win. Just quickly back on the pitch though, you probably can't read too much into this as an exact. But it does go to show, I think, just some of those things that we mentioned in terms of the metrics are quite funny. So I think Gary mentioned this a little while ago in one of his write-ups that, in terms of the expected goals table, we're 6th. Now, do I put everything in that? No, obviously not. I don't think we are the 6th best team in League One. Do I think we're better than where we are now? Marginally, yes. But I don't think we're quite 6th. But where do you think Reading are in the XG table? Bearing in mind they are occupying 6th in the league at the moment.
Well, given that you kind of hinted that they are outperforming their XG at both ends of the table, I would probably say 12th.
I thought it'd be something like that. They're 18th.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so it's a huge overperformance. Like I said, that doesn't take into consideration any context or any of those intangibles. So I don't think are they the 18th best team in the league? No, I think they're better than that, but they're probably not quite the 6th best team. Are we the 6th best team? No, I don't think we're quite that good, but we're probably maybe just a little bit above where we are. I actually think we're probably quite similarly matched in terms of overall ability, but definitely different stylistically. So stylistically, it maybe suits us, but I think maybe emotionally and those kind of intangibles, it probably definitely suits Reading. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and just to wrap up on that now, I think the one thing that sticks in my mind from this season with regard to Reading is when they lost Sam Smith. Sam Smith going to Wrexham was one of those signings where I think we said at the time, oh, that looks like a relatively standard League One signing. Like a League One player going to a League One club. Okay, cool. Makes sense. And then you see the transfer fee attached to it, and it was £2 million. It's like, what the hell is going on in this division? And that sums up what's gone on this season for me. It was absolute madness. But obviously, yeah, when I was chatting to Matt, he said that was a big moment in the season, losing their leading goal scorer at the time. their sort of focal point, I guess, go into what has turned out to be a promotion rival. It seemed like a decent bit of business. The other one as well, from a Reading point of view, I think they've sold Tyler Binden, their defender, sold him to Forest, but he's been loaned back for the rest of the season. So again, that's nearly £3 million worth of transfers from two players, which is just mental.
That's obviously going to really help. They've got a really good, they've got some really good players. No, they've had to sell a few, but that's forced them to play, younger players that, Binden particularly, of course, have played through their academy. I think it's good business, isn't it, to be able to sell him and still get him for the rest of the season. But I thought the sale of Sam Smith and Ruben Sayers leaving would really derail them, but it just hasn't at all. And Harvey Imps has taken on that obviously it's a slightly different position, but taken on that responsibility for the goal scoring a little bit as well. Yeah. Just quickly, I've just seen what kind of Carl's put in the chat here in regard to we have a duty to turn up and give it our all. I agree, absolutely agree, 100%. And you know what? I wouldn't have doubted that we would if it wasn't for the difficulty in getting some intensity into the game on Saturday against Shrewsbury after a really positive start. Now, part of that was the fact that Shrewsbury, after they scored their goal, played with 11 men behind the ball for the rest of the game. But we wanted to play at a faster intensity. We all know that. So if that hadn't happened, if we had the same level of intensity as we played against Charlton, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind that we might not turn up in that regard. So I'm hoping, with you, Ben, I'm hoping that, particularly after Michael referenced it as well a couple of times, that everything will be all right and the lads will turn up for the reasons that you mentioned. I have just seen something else here, which might be a nice place to end this. So Roy has asked, out of our games left, whose party would we actually like to spoil the most? And he said Wrexham. I'm so torn because
we're going to have the same answer on this.
Yeah, okay. So it's head versus heart, isn't it? Heart, completely agree. Bugger them. Let's bring them all to Sincil Bank. They need to get a result, and they don't get it, and we can all
put that on your TV show.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it'd be brilliant. But it just makes next season harder. It just makes next season harder, doesn't it? Another team's going to spend ridiculous money, well above what their traditional income would be. So my head says just get them out, just win, get out of the league. Hopefully they've got it wrapped up before they even come to Sincil Bank, so it's not even a talking point. And they're just gone and out of the way and out of a discussion, and the whole kind of circus around them disappears from League One as well. But I mean, heart. So if there was something to play for on the final day of the season, and we did get the result, of course I would enjoy that and bask in that. The Schadenfreude of it would be glorious.
So in terms of actual ability to spoil a party, right? Let's have a look. So Wrexham 82 in second, Wickham in third on 81, Stockport in fourth on 77. Then obviously Reading are in sixth on 69, Orient in seventh on 66, and Bolton are in eighth on 66. So in terms of party spoiling, realistically, we can do it for Reading, Bolton, or Wrexham. I think Stockport are safe in the playoffs. Like they're not going to. Stockport aren't going to hit second, and they're not going to drop down to seventh. It's mathematically impossible, I think, for them to. Maybe they'd have to lose all four, but yeah, for me, I'd kind of want to spoil Bolton's party.
Yeah, me too. For you know what, multiple reasons. Number one, I thought they were going to be good this season, and they've been nowhere near the level I thought they would be. I'd be a bit peed off if they somehow sneak into the playoffs after a really underwhelming season. Also, they treat our supporters terribly when we visit there. I know they put the prices down this season, which was useful, but we were treated poorly by the stewards and like heavy-handed police and not allowed in the fan zone and stuff. And obviously the season before, charging ridiculous money for away fans. So I just don't really like them very much in regard to how they treat us. So yeah, I'd quite like to piss on their bonfire a little bit. I'm with you.
Yeah, for me, like it would be Bolton. Just a quick one. Adrian Sanchez asks, "Why has my algorithm suggested these guys?" Lol. I have no idea, but you're more than welcome to join and become a Lincoln City fan through the algorithm. That's how it works. Yeah, I mean, look, I'd like to spoil Bolton's party. Just because there's part of me that deep down, and I know this is probably going to get clipped up and used for whatever purposes, I think it's a little bit funny that they're still down in this division. like having been, a Premier League club for quite a while, and established themselves there, and then it's they've dropped down to this point. It's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you're here forever now. It's like that bit in The Simpsons, with the "Don't forget you're here forever" sign behind Homer's desk. It feels a bit like that. So, yeah, I mean, the Wrexham thing. Look, we've talked about it before. I absolutely have all of the respect in the world for all of the Wrexham fans that were there through, everything. And ultimately, I don't really have a problem with how things, have gone for them. It's the same as what's happened with Birmingham. You've got the money, you might as well spend it. And yes, you've worked yourself up through the division. Like, yeah, fair enough. The fact that it's happened through, the Hollywood money and all the rest of it, okay, fine. The only reason I think that a lot of people are annoyed about it, let's be honest, it's probably a bit of jealousy. We'd absolutely love it if Hugh Jackman came to Lincoln and went, there you go. Let's, here's a bunch of money, Lincoln City FC. Let's become Hugh Jackman is an imp, and then we're going to take the club to new heights, and then we steamroll the divisions. It'd be amazing. Like,
man, it's weird.
Mainly because it'd mean that Wolverine is an imp, but
sitting here right now, I'm thinking, no, I don't know if I would like it, but maybe that's just like you say, that's jealousy because we haven't got it. But yeah. I think there's one thing for Wrexham, like the documentary is really well put together, and the impact they've had across the whole city is brilliant. Like, you can't deny that. And they're on the crest of a wave. And again, we kind of had an element of that ourselves, didn't we, for a short while? So you kind of understand that and respect it, really. A big criticism of mine was that the owners put their money in through loans, but they've been paid back now, so can't really criticize that anymore. So yeah, it probably is jealousy. I just think it's the fact that they're just spending shitloads more money than everyone else is, other than Birmingham. And if it wasn't for Birmingham, they would have the highest budget in League One, having only just come out of League Two and the National League in the last couple of seasons.
100%.
They haven't done it organically. And I just don't like that element of it, particularly because we are trying our best to punch above our weight and do it organically. Actually, side note, watched a brilliant podcast a couple of days ago with the Exeter CEO. The business of football. Absolutely brilliant. Clearly very similar ethos in regard to how they perceive running of a football club compared to us. Obviously, they're fan-owned and we're not, but the mentality is very similar, I felt. And I felt a lot of like unity with them. And we're so far apart from that approach. And they're asked, again, this is a fan ownership, so it's slightly different to us. But I think the whole idea of trying to be as sustainable as you possibly can, and sustainable means not losing money at all, not losing less than everyone else. It's not losing it eventually. They asked him a question, says, would that work in the Championship? And the CEO said, no, probably not. And isn't that a shame that what we're celebrated for won't work higher up the pitch of the leagues? You have to have that excessive financial backing to actually function, and you have to lose that amount of money to even be competitive on the pitch. That's upsetting, isn't it? And hopefully that won't continue. So Wrexham are doing what they need to do to get to where they want to go. I just don't like that that's what you have to do to get there. I think that's probably what it is.
I think it's a hate the player, not the hate the player, hate the game, not the player. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say. Just quickly, Adrian Sanchez says, right on, let's go Lincoln City FC. I'm going to have to lock in. There we go. That's how you do it. You get a brand new fan because of YouTube's algorithm. That is that is the way that it works. So look, I mean, for the story, I'd absolutely love to spoil Wrexham's party, but for the wider picture, just get them out of the division, please.
It's in our best interest next season for them to bugger off out of the way, but I would very much enjoy spoiling their party in the moment.
100%. Right, well, that's probably got to nearing the end of the podcast now. Two things very quickly. The first one, the raffle got drawn for Gaz's London Marathon sponsorship on Saturday. I've noticed that Flossie is in the comments. I believe you won the big old Sinsel Bank model. So I think there are some details on the site on how to get in touch with Gaz for that one. In addition to that, there are now 3 signed shirts, I believe, up for auction on eBay. All of the money will be going to the foundation through the marathon fundraising efforts. I believe Gaz has hit over £5,000 now, which is phenomenal. The chances are there will not be a podcast next Sunday, unless unless you and Charlie are about, because I think we're heading down to that London, and obviously Gary will be in that London as well. I don't know if he's mentioned it.
Yeah, it depends on. And we'll do our best. I'll be around. We'll do our best. We'll put something together if we can. I'll just do a monologue. No one will listen.
So yeah, there we go. Next podcast will be Saturday. Like reviewing Reading and previewing Bolton. I can't remember. I don't think there's anything else. Just go and sponsor Gaz if you haven't already. Like he's doing the marathon in 8 days' time. We will stop talking about it then. I'm sure he won't, but that's the way that things work. But yeah, nothing else to say this week other than, of course, up the Imps.
Up the Imps.